With thought leadership from renowned universities, federal research institutes, and top-ranked hospital systems, Ohio produces significant industrial, technology, and health research and development, as well as many promising startup companies. But to commercialize discoveries and scale their businesses, these organizations need access to capital. A lack of funding sources here in Ohio has created a tough landscape for startups, increasing the likelihood that they'll flee Ohio to find venture capital deals on the coasts. Enter the JobsOhio Growth Capital Fund. Growth Capital invests alongside venture sponsors to fuel innovative, high-growth companies and establish significant funding anchors and partners. This ensures that Ohio can activate intellectual property, retain and attract talent, and accelerate startup growth. A healthy startup ecosystem is crucial to Ohio's economic health. It drives institutional competitiveness, delivers financial returns for investors and institutions, and creates skilled jobs. In fact, research suggests that high-growth startups can account for as much as 50% of a region's employment growth. The Growth Capital Fund opens opportunities not just for companies that are already Ohio-based, but also creates an incentive for organizations outside Ohio to relocate here. Although still in its early stages, the fund has produced measurable results, investing in 51 companies, which in turn attracted $350 million in capital to the state, all of which helps companies meet critical milestones and attract sizable investments from large coastal investors while keeping their locations in Ohio.
So, Cincy Tech, we fund startup companies, and we start at the seed stage and then participate through the early stages of capital. And we only do this in Ohio, and we run investment funds to do that. So we've worked with JobsOhio for a number of years, and we talk to them for help with introductions, help for context on companies and things like that. And so we've talked to them about this need in this really scaling capital space, which is really what's known in the venture capital world as Series A and Series B, after a company's received their seed capital, but then they're ready to really grow and scale. We have a situation in Ohio that is really common throughout, not just the Midwest, but let's call it the middle part of the country. And that is that there are a lot of seed stage funders. There's a lot of seed funds, there's a lot of angel funds that get involved at the seed stage. And where the gap really is this early scaling capital. JobsOhio stepping in here has really been helpful to a bunch of our portfolio companies, and I know of a bunch of other companies that we're not invested in throughout Ohio that it's really been important to. And its importance, there's several areas of importance. Number one, 90 to 95% of the venture capital invested in Ohio companies is not coming from either funds or strategics that are located in Ohio. So we're bringing those funders in from out of the state, and the fact that there is a good faith funder here in JobsOhio that's willing to do up to 20% of a venture round is really helpful, because those funds and those strategics know that they have the ability to fill out a round. So in general, and we're the same way, it's nice to be close to the companies. You know, we're invested in a company that's literally 3/4 of a mile from my house, so I walked there this morning and talked to them. And so the investors, the major investors on the coast are no different. So you need an extra pool to get people to invest out of their area. And that pool has to be, a very superior piece of intellectual property. But this JobsOhio piece certainly helps get investors over the hump and come to Ohio and invest here. One of the things that we've really focused on is taking that intellectual property out of these research institutions in cooperation with the research institutions and founding companies here that can grow and scale here to create high return companies. Having the adequate capital at this early scaling stage is critical, and the JobsOhio Capital Fund has been exceedingly helpful in building out a syndicate to fund those rounds.
I'm the CEO and co-founder of S4 Medical. We're dealing with a disease that's very commonly known called atrial fibrillation. And the most common method for curing that disease is a procedure called catheter ablation, where they literally move minimally invasively, they go through the veins and through the arteries into the heart, and they do something called an ablation procedure, where they're literally creating lesions, ablation lesions in the heart. And where we come in is anatomically, the heart sits directly in front of the esophagus. And so there is a risk of thermal injury from the ablation procedure to the esophagus. And the medical community has struggled for a long time on how to really prevent that. And so we came up with this device that it's literally a catheter that goes down the esophagus, so it goes in through your mouth. The esophagus connects your mouth to your stomach, and we actually just move the esophagus out of the way during the procedure. And so if it's out of the way, it can't be injured by the heat created during the ablation procedure. And so really, in a nutshell, it's a very simple device. It just moves the esophagus and then allows the electrophysiologist, the physician, to do the procedure without any risk of damage to the esophagus. I called around to companies like Medtronic and Boston Scientific and Johnson & Johnson, so big, well-known companies that are in this market, and they said, yeah, indeed, that is a big problem, and it's something that we've been trying to find a solution for a long time. And so that right there was, that was the impetus where I said, I think we got something here. Now we need funding. Now we got to prove it out that it works. We have an interesting story. So when we first put the company together, we actually had a major strategic investor that wanted to put money in right away. And we thought, you know what, we don't want to lock up with one company so soon. The early stage funding was here. It's well established in Ohio. Ohio has done a great job with really kind of many of them being state initiated, but we have a great network of early stage funds throughout Ohio in all the major cities and even in between. So luckily we were able to do our first two rounds of funding solely with Ohio early stage funders. Now, okay, we got to work through the FDA. Now we need a bigger pot of money. We have to run a big clinical study. We're going to need more resources and more people, more help. And so that's what led us to that third round, which included JobsOhio. We connected with JobsOhio, and it turned out they have a fund that was just perfect for us. And it was a pleasure to work with JobsOhio. I mean, it just was so seamless. It was such an easy, efficient process. They kind of came right in, and they filled that void that we needed. And really, the great thing was they allowed us to just kind of keep all that funding inside of Ohio, which is just so great, right? Because it really it anchors S4 Medical right here in Ohio. And hopefully what we see ultimately is, some other funds, because, you want competition in this space. I mean, having access to capital is never a bad thing. That just gives more of a spark to all the innovation out there, more funding to get these ideas launched, more companies created, more jobs created, and most of them will stay here. I think Ohio has everything that entrepreneurs need in the healthcare innovation space. You don't really need to go outside this region. Again, I give JobsOhio just so much credit and applause for what they've done with that fund.
The Growth Capital Fund helps us continue to build a vibrant and sustainable ecosystem of ideas, infrastructure, and talent, and will propel Ohio to become recognized as the most innovative, creative, and entrepreneurial state in the Midwest.